This interpretation of philosophy recognizes the importance of emotions and asserts that capabilities matter. It posits that the intellectual and physical dimensions of life are not adversaries. I find this perspective on philosophy genuinely intriguing. However, Martha Nussbaum has presented it in some of the least engaging ways possible. The core issue is not that emotions are irrelevant to ethics or that literature has no place in academic discourse. Rather, the concern is that Nussbaum has based her career on insights that are flimsy enough to cross a street, only to have padded them into a sprawling empire of books that are excessively cross-referenced and laden with classical footnotes. Questioning the foundations of her work can feel like an act of vandalism. Consider her capabilities approach. This concept, generously borrowed from Amartya Sen and repaid with footnotes instead of substantive credit, suggests that human flourishing requires certain specific capabilities such as health and affiliation. This notion is clear and reasonable. However, it fails to address how one might resolve conflicts between these capabilities. For instance, when the capability for religious expression clashes with the capability for bodily integrity, Nussbaum produces more elegant prose, name-dropping Aristotle and Cicero, but ultimately provides no resolution. This framework serves as a language for discussing justice, yet it lacks a mechanism for realizing it, like a menu without a kitchen. Turning to her major work on emotions, Upheavals of Thought, we see a shift in the issue, though it intensifies. Her central claim that emotions are cognitive appraisals rather than mere instinctive reactions draws from Stoic philosophy, but she spends 800 pages contradicting it. The ancient Greeks are both summoned as witnesses and cross-examined. By the end, while you've learned much about grief, love, and compassion, you've only grasped them as evaluative judgments that attribute significance to external stimuli. This is technically correct, yet it drains the subject of vitality. However, the main concern lies with her book on shame, Hiding from Humanity. Nussbaum categorizes shame as inherently destructive, a corrosive social weapon that should largely be removed from our moral lexicon in favor of guilt. She argues that while guilt pertains to actions, shame attacks the self, making it cruel. This proposition appears enlightened, but she ends with a conclusion that it poses political danger, which is rather bold. She suggests that a society dependent on shame is one attempting to evade the reality of human limitations. There are numerous confusions in her argument. First, it is crucial to differentiate between the psychological and sociological aspects of shame. Psychologically, shame relates to feelings of self-depreciation, whereas sociologically it involves being trapped in power dynamics. While these psychological and sociological dimensions are interconnected, they should be treated as distinct. Moreover, Nussbaum conflates self-esteem and dignity, overlooking that self-esteem is a psychological state, while dignity carries a social implication of worthiness. Additionally, she critiques societies that operate on shame, often citing examples from individualistic Western cultures. However, shame is more prevalent in traditional societies, suggesting that her anti-shame agenda encompasses a broader scope than any revolutionary movements we have previously encountered. Eliminating shame from ethics and substituting it with guilt does not lead to a more compassionate society. Rather, it fosters a more individualistic one. Do we really want individuals in our culture to become more self-centered? Ultimately, Nussbaum, who has built her career on expanding the moral landscape, concludes by narrowing the definition of moral discomfort. This is not philosophy becoming more compassionate. It is philosophy deciding that certain costs are too great to bear, subsequently labeling this decision as progress.